Wherever you are, welcome to another of my takes on China from Henan. For the last 5 years, I've been fighting to prove that media hype and anti-China rhetoric is biased. China is misunderstood. Many of its policies, its legalities, and even parts of its society are misinterpreted. And as a result, we are misinformed. Sometimes the misinformation is simply misunderstanding. Sometimes it's an outright lie. But almost 100% of Western media on China is wrong. Almost every single politician in the USA, UK, Australia, and even most in New Zealand, as well as many in Europe, are informed by people who read this misinformation, and therefore they are misinformed too. But it gets even worse when we realize that the senior advisors to government decision makers are getting it wrong through these sources. Why does no one think to ask China or the Chinese what they think, instead of assuming that they would all think the same as us? It's basic behavioral psychology 101. People with different backgrounds will act differently to the same set of stimulus. So a country that has no history of wars outside its own borders, which builds a military, is unlikely to take that military outside of its own borders. If it's had the ability to do so for 5,000 years and never done that, what makes people think it's going to do that now? So when media employs people like Gordon Chang, Adrian Zenz, Peter Zinn, and the like, they get it wrong. And when politicians listen to them, they amplify mistakes made by that media, which then gives media the opportunity to parrot those mistakes further. That's the media side and how it works. But then there's the military side. Admirals and generals in the military are getting offers of fantastic jobs and consultancies, even while still serving to advise government. The people who make the threats of China are the same people who repeat and amplify them and profit from them. And the moment they do, the media jumps on it again to parrot those threats. So at any given time, China is either collapsing, it's a huge threat, it's shrinking, or it's growing to overcapacity. It's threatening, or it's being threatened. None of this is true. China is just doing what China does. So why is this important geopolitically? It's important to understand we can't judge a situation by what we're reading in media. That's not to say that all media is wrong. It's to say that allegations in media are not proof, and statements from politicians and even witnesses are not evidence. For them to be accepted as proof and treated as evidence, they've got to be counter-checked. They must be cross-examined. Where a statement is made, it must be verified to a point where it's accepted as real. And there are many ways to do this. I've been to Hong Kong. I know it has all the democratic freedoms of other countries. It gained much and lost nothing by being handed back to China. It has a free press that can write anything it wants, as long as it complies with written and clearly understood laws. Every person I know in China and in Hong Kong believes the same. I've yet to meet a Hong Konger who hates the mainland. Although I do know there are many of them in the USA and the UK, they never cross my path. And yet every day in media, I read that Hong Kong citizens hate the mainland, they hate the CPC, and they want independence. Yet every single witness who states this is outside of Hong Kong, living in a region that provides them income, pays for their statements, and supports their lifestyles as long as they consistently denigrate their homeland. We're seeing one side of one interpretation by some biased people and statements from people who have a grievance. But if you go to Hong Kong and ask people there, they have a very different story. By the same token, I've never yet met a Tibetan who hates China, nor have I met a Uyghur in Xinjiang who hates China and wants to be part of a separate country. In my entire time in China, I've never met a single Chinese person who wants a US-style democracy. And if I suggest it, which I often do over a few beers, I'm laughed off the table as ridiculous. And yet every day I pick up media in some form or another and read that Chinese people hate their government and need to be rescued from it. Nothing could be further from the truth. So let me ask again, why is this important on a geopolitical scale? One reason is that in a recent video I made about a certain country in a certain region doing certain things, many of the respondents are critical of China for not taking certain steps. China could stop trading, it could expel ambassadors, it could close their embassies and rebuke the people responsible. And while all this seems reasonable, it's important to point out that it's not ethical to do so. And to do so would make China no better than the USA, who I firmly believe are a rogue nation in breach of every one of their own agreements as well as international laws. And that's not an opinion, that's a fact. They openly admit they broke every treaty with Native Americans. They openly admit they interfere in elections and other sovereign nations. They openly admit they have military personnel in Taiwan in breach of their agreements and declarations that their presidents have signed with China. And Trump just the other day openly admitted in the White House that he destroyed Nord Stream 2. Something, even though it caused international headlines, couldn't possibly be true because he wasn't in power when it happened. Again, misinformation from the President of the United States. He's clearly not just a narcissist, he's a lying narcissist too. But that's not why I wanted to talk about this now. Let me ask you a question. Do you believe your media? In China I do, but in the West I most certainly do not. I've yet to catch Chinese media lying to me, but I know they don't give me all the stories that I want to know about. But what they do give me, I can be assured is true and has been checked. In the West, I can't. So when people tell me that China ought to sanction, censure, cease trading, or take action, even militarily, against a certain country, I have to ask you this again. Despite what we want and what we think of one country, do you believe your media? We all know the answer is no, we don't. And yet all the information we're receiving is coming to us from that source, a source we don't trust. The truth is, I've watched China get vilified internationally by the US and US-influenced countries for the last few years. And I've fought against it in my social media work. Now I'm watching as one other country is vilified. I have a responsibility to apply the same standards to that country as I do to China. Whatever we think is going on is all allegations. They might be true, they might not. I didn't believe the allegations against China over Xinjiang, and I went there to meet locals and find out for myself. I didn't believe the allegations about Xinjiang, Tibet, so I went there and I met locals and I found out for myself. So before anyone jumps on me and says, it's obvious Israel is doing something, I do agree. It appears obvious. It appears to be indisputable, and even the ICC has said there is a plausible truth to it. But that's not proof. What that means is there's evidence that needs to be considered before decisions are made. I personally believe the allegations, and in this video and my previous one, I'm not expressing my own opinions, but explaining why China acts the way it acts. I haven't been there to see for myself. I haven't spoken to Palestinians to see what they're going through. And if I start believing everything that I see in the media, it means that I should believe everything the same media tells me about China. Some things are certain, and therefore my opinions seem to be supported by what I'm hearing and what I'm seeing from the region. There is a lot of damage. There are a lot of deaths. There is a lot of rhetoric from one side about cleaning out the region, and all of these can be ascertained as true. But my opinions are not what drive national security, international relations, or geopolitics. They're simply opinions. I do not for 1 minute support the side causing the destruction. No one in their right mind can. But there's also the logic of innocent until proven guilty. The moment China says it will stop trading with one party to this conflict, they're taking sides. The moment they do that, they're no better than the US, a rogue nation. If they do that, if they take a side, they are the same as the USA, disregarding a legal position that they need to uphold. One day there will be arbitration, there will be reparations, There will be a righting of the wrongs, but before that day comes, there needs to be at least one adult in the room who can be relied upon to have not taken sides, not been a party to the conflict in one way or the other. Right now, China is that adult. It's allowing the presumption of innocence until that presumption has been proven to be wrong, rather than acting on the allegations, which we all know can lead to misunderstandings. Personally, I'd like to see China act more assertively geopolitically. That makes sense that they don't. Because while they do not, they can hold their heads up globally as being a reliable trading partner that does not listen to allegations in the media. I know this is not what a lot of people want to hear, and I know it doesn't help end the slaughter or the conflict, but I hope that people who hold China in contempt for its inaction can understand this is the way it must be. Otherwise, there'll never be an end to it, and it only leads to further escalations. When the ICC and the UN have approved action by China, then China will take action as part of a larger global organization. Until that time, China needs to do what it always does: act in a mature, responsible, and sensible way, handling everything through legal channels and with diplomatic means. And for those who think China is inactive, take a look at Chinese media, not Western media, or take a moment to Google how much aid China has sent to the region. It's been going on for half a century. China is not leaving Palestinians high and dry. It's doing everything it socially, legally, and diplomatically can to bring an end to this conflict. It's spoken often and loudly in the UN too, and if any organization is to be held accountable in the future for this, it must be the UN. The power of veto has to be removed, and democracy has to be restored. Thanks once again for watching my take on China. Please don't jump down my throat and tell me that I'm wrong about this. I am trying to give you China's position, not my personal opinion. I will see you next time. Bye for now.